Greetings, everyone. It's Tony here from Locks to Reads. Greetings. This is a slightly delayed what I'm going to read in September video. I should start with I have finished a number of books already this month. I have finished. I did a sort of theatrical dip. So I finished Kenneth Tynan's theatre writings, and I've read Shakespeare by McBain. Now, I mentioned in the previous video, this is mostly photographs from very old Shakespeare productions, but it has a sort of long section on McBain's career and how he came to create these pictures. I mean, there's some amazing shots in here. You can't really, this won't really do justice. Now, sort of in parallel to that, I read Kenneth Tynan's theatre writings, which is just a collection of its reviews and thought pieces from the sort of 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's a reminder that the past is a different country. There are things that there's talk in here about the sort of oncoming change of acting styles, about how British theatre is dying, that the interesting stuff is coming from Europe and the United States. It's also quite strong on some of the then sort of controversies about creating a national theatre, the role of the Lord Chamberlain, who up until 1968 could censor and ban plays before they'd even been seen, on the basis of fairly arbitrary lists of crimes in inverted commas. It's an astonishing thing to think now that they used to do that. And there's some excellent bits in here. Tynan's writing I mean, Kenneth Tynan, if he's known for anything now, is probably only known for being the first man to say fuck on British TV. I can swear because I'm unmonetised. If the use of the fuck word upsets you, then I apologise. The writing is superb and funny in a sort of acidic way. He has a couple of bugbears. He doesn't really like Vivian Leigh very much. He doesn't like Gielgud that much either. And he worships Olivier. Now, when you see the acting of some of these people, British acting has changed so much, mostly since this era. Even theatre acting is much more naturalistic than it used to be. That's not to say they were bad. They were bad. They were just stylistically very different. And for example, like I love Olivier's Henry V. I like his Hamlet. I like the Richard III film as well. But his Othello is just it's unbearable to watch. I think. Apparently, though, on stage it was one of the most amazing things you'd ever seen. But the film footage I've seen of it, he's overly blacked up, and the voice is just, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me at all. I think a white actor can play Othello, but you just don't black them up. And you can have a black actor play Iago. But this made me think a lot about theatre, about why I like the theatre. Because I originally bought this and read it when I was really getting into going to the theatre again, back in 2008, I think. I've been a couple of times recently, but not as often as I used to go. And I love the theatre. I think theatre, watching a live theatre production is a good live theatre production is one of the greatest things you'll ever experience. Film is great, music is great, but for me, theatre and opera are the two things that I love watching live, and I love the impact they have on you while you're sitting there. And acting is magic, to some degree. So yeah, I really recommend it. If you like the theatre, even though it's about old plays, there's a lot about playwriting in general. And there's a great he bangs a drum quite a lot about the fact that a lot of great British um, playwriting is actually great Irish playwriting, um, and that there's a huge gap in which the only great playwrights in the English theatre are Irish. So that's I've read those two, and I've also read. I'm about to start book 3 of. Well, it's actually book 6. This will be hard to do because it's very bright. But this is A Dance to the Music of Time Summer, which is the second 3 books in Anthony Power's A Dance to the Music of Time, which I am reading along with Alyssa of at Nerdy Nurse Reads. She has been patiently waiting for me to finish these. If she hasn't started the next 3, I'd be very surprised. But I'm on the last one. This is brilliant. I can't recommend this enough. Even it's 12 books. It's so. It is It is an English Proust. Um, it is fun. It is funny, as well as serious. Um, and the writing is so sharp. And the asides. Sometimes it reminds me of P.G. Wodehouse. It's a sort of Proust meets P.G. Wodehouse, if you can possibly imagine something like that. And I'm looking forward to it. Might finish the 3rd book today. They're reasonably short. They're all about 200 and something pages. So that's what I've read so far in September. Now the question is, what am I going to read in the rest of September? What I've done is I've compiled what I'm calling a rolling TBR that I pulled together from all the various reading projects I've got on the go, rabbit holes I've jumped down, and that list, which is probably going to be the list I'm going to be working from for the rest of the year, has 98 books on it, and they are drawn from. I planned to reread the James Bond books, the Ian Fleming books, which I have read at least once. Some of them have come more than once. But I kind of fancy doing that as an exercise and watching all the Bond films alongside them. The book a long list. The short list is due to come out fairly shortly. It comes out in September at some point. I have read one of the long list. I am tempted by more. I'm not in the frame of mind that I've been in previous years to read them all. And one of them isn't even out yet. It doesn't come out till after the shortlist comes out. That's a bugbear of mine with book awards, especially with the Booker Prize. If the book isn't published in England before the long list date, it shouldn't be allowed to be included on the long list. I know that's a sort of weird rant, a weird hill to die on, but it just seems like then makes the prize all about publishers and critics and not about the general reader. But maybe the Booker Prize has never been about the general reader. That's like an exam question. Is the Booker Prize designed for the general reader? Discuss. Then there's the 13 library books I've got left to read of the 16. They're now due back on the 22nd of the 9th. I have renewed these, and I keep being distracted by other things. So this is the final time. I'm going to read as many of them as I can before the return date. Anything left over goes out the window. Then I've identified a couple of books that I started and haven't finished. Big, chunky, literary, translated books. I might which is 2666 by Roberto Bolano and Solenoid by Mircea Cartarescu. So they're on the potential list. My author projects have various books on them. So there's Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, Matter by Ian M. Banks. Then there's I'm planning to reread Wuthering Heights, a book that I didn't really enjoy when I read it the first time, because of the impending terrible looking film. Then Family and Friends by Anita Bruckner. Then Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. It's a Battlefield by Graham Greene. The Joke by Milan Kundera. The Looking Glass War by John le Carrier. The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. Uh, 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. Although that one is so big, I'm probably almost certainly going to split that over a longer period of time. Um, then, and I think is that it for the author? Oh no, Burmese Days by George Orwell. Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. Barbara Pym, Jane and Prudence. Clouds of Witness by Dorothy L. Sayers. Hard to Be a God by the Strugatsky brothers. And that's it for the author project. Then I realised that my NetGalley account, I've got books I'm supposed to read that I got from NetGalley, and I've failed to do. There are a chunk of those. I am going to try and get to as many of those as possible, even though some of them are like very old and have been out for some time. So there is. Where's my NetGalley list? I'm kind of reading this off a spreadsheet, if you can't already tell. Hang on. Where are they? Oh, they're here. Hang on. There. I'm just going to sort this out so I can read it. Okay, so there are 16 books in my NetGalley account that I haven't got around to reading. They are in no particular order. The Making of Oliver Cromwell by Ronald Hutton. That's book one of an Oliver Cromwell biography by Hutton. The Making of Oliver Cromwell isn't a NetGalley book, but I got the NetGalley for Oliver Cromwell, Commander in Chief, which is the second book. So I want to read the first book before I read the second book, and that actually ties in nicely with the work I'm doing on the Milton project as the half-host historian. There'll be an update on that some point next week. Malcolm Before X by Patrick Parr. The Last Dynasty, Ancient Egypt, from Alexander the Great to Cleopatra by Toby Wilkinson. How to Be Avant-Garde by Modern Artists and the Quest to End Art by Morgan Faulkner. Awake, William Blake and the Power of the Imagination by Mark Vernon. God's Own Gentlewoman, The Life of Margaret Paston by Diane Watt. Kings, Queens and Fallen Monarchies by Robert Stove. Something Wicked, The Lives, Crimes and Deaths of the Pendle Witches by Caroline Lee. I'd be fascinated by the Pendle Witch. I went to university in Lancaster. A number of the Pendle Witches were hung in Lancaster, off of Lancaster Castle, which still exists. It was a prison for a long time. I think it's finally not a prison anymore. Then, unfortunately, She Was a Nymphomaniac, A New History of Rome's Imperial Women by Joan Smith, which sounds fascinating. Swimming Pretty, Vicky Volosek. The Boundless Deep by Richard Holmes, which is about Tennyson. Swimming Pretty is about women in the water. It just sounded like a fascinating read. I read the Haunts of the Black Masseur a long time ago, which is about swimming, and it was a really brilliant book. I can't remember the author's name. And I like to read the occasional book related to and around sport and exercise, even though I don't do either of those things myself. The Private Life of James II by Justine Brown. Searching for John DeWitt by John Chase, which is a American World War One book. These are all non-fiction, by the way. Into the Reich, The Red Army's Advance to the Oder in 1945 by Prit Butter, I'm going to say. The Army That Never Was by Taylor Downing, and Reign of Ruin, Tokyo, Hiroshima and the Surrender of Japan by Richard Overy. Now, I've started the Richard Overy book. The rest I'm going to try and get to as soon as possible. And I apologise to the authors and publishers who sent me those NetGalley reviews for not getting around to them. I am easily distracted. I have never tried really to bother to get fiction books from NetGalley because I'm not really. Nobody would see me as a fiction reviewer at this point, really. Then there's a couple of books from about Christopher Marlowe. I'm going to see the play, the title of which I can't remember, about Marlowe and Shakespeare that stars Ncuti Gatwa in October, and I sort of thought it'd be nice to prepare by reading a couple of books and reading some Marlowe itself. I read Faust, um, Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe a little while back, and I really I liked that. I preferred it to Goethe's version. I think it was funnier mainly. Um, but I've got a collection of his plays and poetry. I've seen Tambalan in a small production which sort of pound the two plays together. Um, so I thought it'd just be good use to get into the thing. And then there's a couple of series um, that I intend to finish. There's His Dark Materials. I've read book one, haven't read the other two. Planning to get those out. So The Subtle Knife is next. And then the Locked Tomb trilogy by Tamsin Muir. I've read the book one, but I haven't read Harrow the Ninth or Nona the Ninth. So that's my next there on my list as well. And then there's a series of random books. I picked like five books from the list of things I put on my Goodreads want to read list, and I went to the beginning, the earliest entries of 2013, and I've still not read them. So I picked the first 5 or 10 off of that list to get around to. That includes I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, which I'm actually not that bothered about reading, but I have a copy and I should probably read it so I can decide whether it's as terrible as most people seem to think it is. I know a lot of people like it, but having flicked through it a bit, I think I'm not going to like it very much. But I might be being harsh. And then there's a couple of poetry collections. I need to finish John Clare's The Major Works. There's a lot of that to go. I picked up T.S. Eliot's collected poems 1909 to 1962. I was supposed to do that for Eliot for last month. There was an Eliot reading project going on, which I failed to get around to. But I've got that to read. So once I've finished the major work, so those will probably be the two major poetry things I read in September. I'm not going to read all of this in September. This is really September, October, November. Well, September, October, and December, because November I usually exclusively devote to my Remembrance Reads month, where I read books that are related to and focused only on World War One, fiction, poetry, non-fiction. Last year I sort of announced it on the first. That's how when I started my channel, was when I did last year's Remembrance Reads. Those of you who've been watching me since then, the 5 of you, would have remembered that. I'm going to do the same thing in this November coming. I'll do my announcement in October though this time, to give everybody time to prepare, and I'll try and work out a proper plan of. The one thing I always reread in this period is In Parenthesis by David Jones, which, as you'll have heard me say a number of times, is I think the greatest work of art coming out, well, of literature to come out of World War One. I don't know how many people would agree with me on that. But then I think I'm going to try and do so that I will put as my recommended read. It's not that long. It is quite thick in the sense of it's got a lot of allusions and references to other literature in it. It's a sort of, I call these books TARDIS books, which is like they are larger on the inside than they are on the outside. So there's that. I dug out a load of my Doctor Who non-fiction, because my finances are such that I'm flogging off a lot of stuff. But actually, I realise there's a lot of things that I want to reread or read that I bought. I had a terrible habit with my Doctor Who stuff of buying things because I wanted to read them and then just putting them on the shelf and watching them gather dust. And I've come in my recent old age to realise that I still love Doctor Who, but I have lost my interest in the collateral around Doctor Who. I've read all the Target novelisations. I've got some of them. I don't really plan to reread them again. the same applies to a number of these non-fiction books. Um, but I'm going to try and read those. So there'll probably be some Doctor Who books discussed in future coming. But this is like the most ridiculous amount of stuff to be potentially reading. As I said, it's 98 books. That's without me adding the Doctor Who stuff to it. Um, and the I think only the mighty Steve Donahue could probably read 99 books in a single month, and probably does on a regular basis. But I haven't learned. I read quite quickly, but I haven't learned to read that quickly. Certainly not if I'm taking notes. Um, so yeah, so that's my September. What I'm reading in September. The answer to which is everything. Um, um, but I'm going to try and, as I said, but that list is September, October, December. Um, I probably could get through it into those 3 months. But the odds are I'm going to add other books to that list as I go. But it's going to be my rolling TBR from now on. I want to get through the one. I've put this up as the starting point. The plan is to read all those 98 books, 99 books. And it'll probably be a rolling. Or maybe I should add another one to make it 100, another two to make it 100, and then that 100 could be my rolling 100. My rolling 100 review. Um, that's a bad punning reference to a film, which I don't know how many people will get. So yeah, that's where we are. My plan is to do now, going forward, I've sort of arranged a schedule, because these have been a bit bitty and they jump into. So every week on a Monday, I will do, from not this week coming, but from next week, I will do. Sorry, yeah, not this week, not the week that commences the 8th, but the week that commences the 8 plus 7, whatever that is, 15th. I will do a weekly reading review. Once a month, I'll do a half-assed historian video, which is talking about where I am in terms of research into the English Civil War and Milton for the project that I'm working on elsewhere. And then there'll be, for the NetGalley books, I will definitely do individual reviews as and when I finish those. Whether I do individual reviews for anything else is moot. I don't know if people want individual book reviews anymore. And if I'm going to do individual book reviews, they need to be done properly and not in my current rambling style. By rambling, I mean unprepared. So yeah, that's the plan. As somebody famous once said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So we will see if this will last. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Apparently that all helps me and when dealing with the algorithm. I have not even thought about the algorithm at this point, because I'm not planning to monetize this. I may accept sponsorship from something I love, and I will certainly accept free books from publishers, non-fiction publishers in particular, and anybody that wants to send me books. But yeah, that's where we are. Hence, also, I don't want to monetize it because I am getting more and more irate with YouTube's ridiculous nannying censorship standards on words that you can say and you can't say, and treating us all like we're children instead of just saying, right, words in and of themselves are not. I'm about to say something that sounds like the sort of thing my words in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. I can think of a couple of exceptions, but mainly the context is what matters. And if you're reviewing books about the Nazis and World War II, and you can't say Nazi, and you can't say Holocaust, you can't say Hitler, what are you even doing? What are you censoring? You're censoring the past. It's like a YouTube version of Newspeak. It drives me mad, and I fucking hate it. The way people have to say unalived instead of dead. or avoid the word suicide. It's just mad. It's like, I can understand that people are sensitive around these issues, but that's what, just have set buttons for sensitivity on the content thing. Just have adult. This is some. Just police the video. If this is a cheap and easy way of policing content, and it still doesn't really avoid people who really want to be arseholes on the internet. It's mainly because the comment, most of the arseholery on YouTube happens in the comments. So that's why I have no plans to monetize this. I don't want to be I don't want to be having to nanny my content just in case I upset YouTube's censors. That whole thing about the Lord Chamberlain censoring plays, has just brought home what a ridiculous situation we're in with YouTube and its language policing. As I said, it's newspeak. It's like if you eliminate a word, you eliminate the idea. If you eliminate the concept of death, maybe death won't happen. It's just madness. So just stop it, YouTube. It's embarrassing. And this rant is going to go on for about a week if I don't stop myself now. But get a grip. It's people are. I mean, okay, history shows that people are quite capable of behaving like children. But if you treat people like adults, they generally behave like adults. If you tell people the truth, as opposed to bullshitting them with stuff and hiding stuff and trying to protect people from things that you think they need protecting from, who gives you the right to decide what we should be protected from? Who? And what? And I know it all comes down to, probably in the end, to money and YouTube worrying that they'll get stamped on from on high if they don't manage this stuff properly. But they don't really. That's not a good enough reason to behave like somebody from 1984. I may be overreacting to this, but it just makes me very, 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 very angry. And I'll stop now because otherwise this video is going to be, well, it's going to be almost half an hour anyway. As I said, I hope you enjoyed that. I apologise for swearing and for shouting and for granting, but God, sometimes this 2025 is a very bad year for adults. There you go. Have a good one anyway. And speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.